Good evening, everyone. Thank you for making it out this evening. On behalf of Arthur Glassfeld, who's on sabbatical overseas right now, I'm happy to welcome you here. And I will introduce Hannah, who will introduce our speaker for this evening. Anyway, I got a degree in organic chemistry at the University of Notre Dame. 6.5 great years working for Rich Taylor in the Taylor Lab. After that, I did a postdoc at Pfizer. I knew I wanted to do industry-oriented work. I knew that I wasn't going to do it as a professor, and so I did an industry postdoc working in medicinal chemistry on fluorine synthesis. After that, I went, and this is really kind of formative for me, for the students in the room. I think the formative cultural experience, bluntly put, is going to be the COVID pandemic. You're going to see a lot of the world through the lens of 2020. God help you. But I see the world through the lens of 2008, where I spent 8 months looking for work and not having a whole lot of success, but ultimately found this position at a small company in Champaign, Illinois, where I learned kilo-scale chemistry. I left Obiter to go work at Lactalis Laboratories, where I am still privileged to work there. It is a small company in North Portland. We manufacture chemicals on the ton scale. It is organic chemistry. From the 5-liter scale this is the largest reactor we have on the planet, and then these are our round bottom flasks in the laboratory. They are 2,000 gallons. So the diameter of them is about the diameter of your table that you're sitting at, probably a little bit larger. A small batch for us is 100 kilos or 50 pounds. This is super fun. It is the best part of, chemistry is really fun. But for me, what is really fun and what I've heard other people say is like, dealing with product with a shovel is really fun. Weirdly, after a while, I moved over to the sales side of my company, which I would not have expected. Contrary to my appearance tonight, I'm actually pretty introverted, but I learned how to do sales. This is our CEO, Alan Erickson, and it's gotten me places that I would not have expected. I have traveled the United States on the road. This is me in 2020, February 2020, wondering, am I spreading COVID? Like, as I'm driving between Ohio, central Pennsylvania and Delaware, happily I wasn't. And this is me in Shanghai helping with our sourcing team. And then this is me at a dinner in New York City. That's very fun. Anyway, the real reason I'm here is that I'm an ACS career consultant. You are sitting here courtesy of the Portland section of the American Chemical Society. And the ACS has career consultants. You can Google the term ACS career consultants, and you can talk to many volunteers, especially if you are a member of the ACS, but if you aren't, just talk to me. And we will help you identify your skills and opportunities to match your skills, help you develop career plans and improve your resume, and lots of other things. I've been privileged to be a career consultant since 2016. So again, the first part of my talk, again, is oriented towards like, what can you do as a chemist, which is really, really broad. And the answer is you can do a lot, right? And it's almost a set of useless things that I can say. The generalization that I'm going to make for this evening is that you can do two things. You can work in the lab. This is a former colleague of mine, Michelle Tran-Dubé. She was a senior principal scientist at Pfizer. She got a bachelor's and a master's in chemistry, and she's been a medicinal chemist for many years, and she received the Heroes of Chemistry Award from ACS for being part of the team that developed crizotinib, which is a lung cancer drug. So, I think that's pretty cool. Part of why people become chemists. You can also work outside the lab. So this is Professor Sean Seymour. He is the Centennial Professor of Law at Vanderbilt University. So I met him when I was in grad school at Notre Dame. You can see that he has a bachelor's in chemistry, a master's in chemistry, and a PhD in chemistry, but he does not work as a chemist. He is a law professor, and he studies patent law and policy and science and technology and how they intersect. So you will hear me say this a couple of times in this talk, but just because you are a chemist does not mean, or that you graduated with a degree in chemistry, does not mean that you will be working in chemistry. From the very basic side, where are the sectors that you can work? I stole this graphic from the ACS College to Careers website, which all of you students, I would recommend that you click through it just to see what there is. You can work in academia. Would the former or current employees of academia please raise their hands? You can work in government. Do we have any government folks? Yeah. Yes, Martha, thank you, I thought so. I'm an industrial chemist. I spent my entire career working in the industry. And then there's the nonprofit sector, which a fair number of people work in. I will point out that the American Chemical Society, broadly speaking, is very heavily academic. Because of that, 67% of members of the ACS have a PhD. That does not mean that you need to get a PhD, but it is just the reality of the ground that we walk on. What kind of science can you do? Again, I stole this. This is so broad as to be useless. The website says that you can do analytical chemistry, biochemistry, organic chemistry, physical chemistry. There's lots of different kinds of chemistry. If your field of chemistry is not represented on this slide, I apologize, but these are the broad strokes. So, if you work as a chemist, where can you live? Where will you work? These are questions that, I could go and I could say, well, you can do anything, right? But from my data-driven perspective, that is not a useful statement because it's so broad as to be. It doesn't mean anything, right? Can you win this football game? Well, we could win or we could lose, right? It's just not helpful. Will these chemicals react? Maybe. That's not useful either. So the Bureau of Labor Statistics has a graph of employment concentration for chemists. And you can see here that the darker green are the ones where chemists work. The lighter green is where chemists tend not to work, which is not particularly surprising. And then there's the state of Colorado, which has no data for it. Which is kind of silly because we could all stand here and between you, me, and everybody else, we could come up with 10 potential employers for chemists in Colorado. I will note that this is the Bureau of Labor Statistics definition of a chemist, which students, the adults, or the older people in this room could have a 45-minute debate about what it means to be a chemist. The Bureau of Labor Statistics has a very narrow definition, that it means gathering qualitative or quantitative measurement of chemicals in a laboratory setting. So these are primarily laboratory chemists. I would note that if you are a chemistry professor, you do not count as a chemist according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. You are for the most part, in this room, we have current and former college professors, and you're considered a post-secondary teacher, chemistry. So, something for you to be aware of, how your government, or at least part of it, views you. Anyway, industrial chemists, they tend to work in pharma, they tend to work in scientific R&D, which is a broad way of saying other kinds of science, but this is one of these things where it is interesting to think about the various places. What does a chemical company call itself, right? If you're Pfizer, you're making drugs, and so you're going to say that you're in the first category, pharmaceutical medicine manufacturing. If you're Curia, which is for many people in the audience, formerly known as Albany Molecular Research, and you do contract work for other people doing chemistry, what is your work product? What are you selling? And is you're selling the knowledge of your scientists. And so I believe that's what that means. Chemical manufacturing is where my company resides, is down there, and then the federal executive branch is basically, if you work for the Department of Energy, that's where you are. But the number of working chemists in the United States, and this is again, BLS's very narrow definition, is 90,000. So, just to give you a little sense of, so broadly, the American workforce is about 160 million people. So you think about what that means in terms of what part of it, what the proportions are, even though we all know that we are the central science. Good question. Oregon chemists, where do they work? Just broadly speaking, it's very interesting. I did not know this before this week. Most chemists in Oregon, and again, this is the narrow definition, work in not a surprise. It's about 50%. The next highest area is Central Oregon. Not a surprise to me, especially those of you who know Central Oregon. It's various pharma manufacturers. And then the East Cascades. So there you are. This is a very different way of looking at things. This is there's a great website out there called Common Organic Chemistry. It's run by one person named Brian Struss. And he has a very nice map that shows all the places that have hired an organic chemist in the last 5 years. As you can see, there's not a lot in Colorado, and really not a lot in New Mexico, but just to give you a sense, basically 50% of them, 50% of the last the last year's organic chemistry jobs are in California and Massachusetts. These are the openings, so he posts openings week in, week out. So that gives you a sense of, if you get an organic chemistry job, where might you work? All right, so this is my favorite part of the talk, because it is something that we as a society tend not to talk about, and I think that's okay. Like, I don't walk around talking about my salary, so why should anybody else? But it is something that we all need to think about. It is a part of why we work where we work. Because if your job paid you $0, you probably wouldn't do it. So first, let's think about U.S. median income. Quick Google this afternoon, the real median earnings of all workers. So median, as a reminder, is half make more, half make less. So for a single person, the median earnings was $41,000. Median household income was $67,000. Remember that a median household in the United States has more than one person. So something to think about as you go home, that, if you're below a certain age, you're going to go home and there's just going to be you, maybe. But many, I am going to go home to a household of 5 people with 2 income earners. So that informs that $67,000. So now I'm going to talk about a different thing, which is how much money, remember, that chemists make. And this is starting versus median. Starting salary is basically when you just start your job. Ultimately, I will talk about median salaries, which is what everybody makes, right? If we were to take somebody in this room who just started in their position, they probably have a lower salary than if we all threw down our salary numbers and we divided them up, and that number would be higher most likely. So just before we get too far. Students in this room, I'm going to remind you that as scientists, you are going to run into the problem of good data and less good data. Some data is less good. Some data is really solid. The data I'm about to show you is less good for a couple of reasons. First, it's the starting salary survey of the American Chemical Society, which the response rate of this is not particularly good, right? We're trying to get you, a student who just got a job, to fill out the postcard that says, like, this is what my starting salary is. And let's think about it. If it was really good, you might want to talk about it. But if it was really good, bad, or not so great, you may be like, I don't feel like we're filling the survey out, because I have to think about it. So, the last time they gave the survey was 2015 or so, and for a bachelor's chemist, it was about $38,000 a year, which, like, again, it's not a lot of money. It would be enough to survive on in Portland in 2022, but, it's not a great salary. And you can see that those are 2015 numbers, right? So that's not, it'd be a little higher. Did a little quick Googling today. So this is Glassdoor, which is a useful website. Again, I would not use this as, for example, a Census Bureau number, which is something where I believe that, that's really solid. You can take it to the bank. But it's what people are inputting into Glassdoor, and the entry-level salary of a bachelor's chemist is about $49,000. this seems pretty reasonable to me in terms of whether or not it's believable, right? If that number came up and it said $250,000, we wouldn't believe it. If it was $0, we wouldn't believe it either. 49,000, yeah, that's probably right. That's probably in the ballpark. Okay, so next, I'm going to show you the data for somebody who has spent 5-point-something years in graduate school, and they just got a job in 2020. Those numbers look a little different. You can see that the industry numbers, 100,000. Sounds about right, and sounds about where your friends are. Government, a little bit lower, 76,000. Academia, 52,000. That's a lower number. I'm going to point out a couple of things here. So first, this is 2020 numbers, so you can adjust those numbers ideally a little bit up. The other thing is that if you are working in academia as a brand new PhD, and you're not a postdoc, this is not postdoc related, what are you? And chances are you are, I believe, a new assistant professor at a relatively small school that does not require a postdoc position. Therefore, you're working at a place that is relatively small, and the likelihood is that the salary is going to be lower, and also possibly the cost of living is going to be lower. So, something to think about. But hey, you're an academic, you have the freedom of being an assistant professor, that's pretty cool too. So, there's positives and negatives. All right, next, I'm going to talk about the median ACS member. You can see the industry numbers look a lot higher. It's $130,000. For government, $104,000. Hey, that's a living wage. Remember, the median survey respondent for the ACS, it's 45 to 54 years old, me, basically, I'm 46, and has a PhD also. I won't say anything about that time. Anyway, you can see that the academic number is still, again, lower. This is going to be a consistent trend. This is something that I will point out, which is kind of amusing to think about. Folks, these are members of the ACS, right? And so they're more likely to work for large companies because large companies will pay for your ACS membership, and some companies, smaller companies, may not. Likely to have a more fine-grained academic number because so many chemists members within the ACS are academics and within the ACS. Chemical engineers. Not too late to change your major, high school students. Chemical engineers always make more. I don't know why, but they always do. All right, Oregon chemist salaries. This is new to me. The median chemist in Oregon, working in industry, makes about $74,000. Looks to be the top 90% makes about $100,000. So pretty similar to the numbers that you might expect. Again, it's not a surprise that the Portland numbers, sorry you can't really see it very well, but the Portland numbers are the highest numbers on the chart. Okay. Here the rubber meets the road. How do you get a chemistry job? I am going to give you a bunch of very simplistic answers. It is three things. That you need to do the work. You need to learn to tell a story, tell your story, and then you need to find your method. So, do the work. You need to learn chemistry in a classroom. If you leave college without actually having learned chemistry, that will not be helpful to your career as a chemist. It sounds very easy for me to say, but I mean, it's not easy, right? All of us in this room are either thinking about chemistry, are in the middle of getting a degree in chemistry, or have gotten a degree in chemistry. It's hard, but still, you need to do it. You need to take BChem. I mean, that sucks. Sorry. The other thing I would really recommend to you is figure out if you like working in the lab. Go work for a lab, undergraduates and high school students. Find an opportunity to go into a lab. It could be paid, it could be unpaid. It's better to be paid than not paid. But still, the goal here is to figure out whether or not you like it. And if you don't like it, don't do things you don't like. Think about where you might want to work and who you might want to work for and what kind of work you would like to do. This is very, very difficult. It is much harder than you think to have the self-knowledge to know that you do not like going to work every single day at the same time, doing the same things, showing up to work at 6:57 a.m. every single day, and clocking out at 4 p.m. If you're not into that, maybe a career in industry might not be for you, especially in a large company. There are some jobs that are very irregular, and there are some jobs that are like clockwork. Figure out whether or not you can do that. Finally, again, another difficult one. Think about how much money means to you. As a 19-year-old, or a 22-year-old, or a 24-year-old, or a 30-year-old, it is very difficult to figure out how much money drives you. But if you are the kind, one of my favorite things, how am I doing on time today? 20. How long?
10 minutes to 8.
What's that?
10 minutes to 8.
Thank you. One of the most difficult things to think about is one, like, well, how much is enough, right? Everybody in this room will say, like, gee, that's really hard. But another thing is relative amounts, and this is the easy one. If you get mad because other people make more money than you, and there's nothing wrong with that, figure that out about yourself. And chemistry might not be for you, especially in an academic career. If you get mad because other people make more money than you. There's a funny internet comment, which, I'm sorry, I read internet comments, they're the worst. Where it was a guy who was basically saying, my brother who's a truck driver makes more than I do. I'm like, fella, go get a degree, go, stop being in the lab, go be a truck driver, right? Like if you get mad because other people make more money because they're in a different field, switch! It's a free country. Sorry. But, like, it's easy for me to say that, right? It's really hard for you to do. But just like, that's the hard part, right? That is most importantly the do the work part of this conversation. Okay, the next hardest part of this is the getting to know people and their jobs. Students, if you take away anything from this talk, your power to ask people who are older than you questions is no more stronger than it is right this moment. If you walked up to me after this talk and asked me what my salary was, I would probably hint at it. I would not do that if you were a random person. But students have the power to ask people, important people, questions. Ask them, what do you like about your job? What do you not like about your job? Do you think that do you think this sector has a good future? These are the questions that you should be asking people who are older than you, and it is a difficult skill, but it can be learned. Do it. The second that you become a job seeker, doing this becomes much, much harder. I'm a salesperson. I call up people in my job and ask them if they want to buy diterbutyl dicarbonate. Guess what? They don't want to talk to me. They don't want to talk to me. But if you call me up or call them up and say, like, I'm a student, I'd like to find out about your job, they would love to talk to you. People like talking about themselves. Take advantage of it. All right. The next step, which is difficult, is learning to tell your story. When you were in school, when you were in the lab, you learned some skills. Learn to talk about those skills. Learn to say to people, I did organic chemistry research. I worked in a research, I worked at a research reactor. These are the things that I liked. This is the kind of science that I like to do. Learn to boil this down into 300 words, into something that you can put into a resume, something that you can put into a cover letter. Learn to do it in writing, learn to do it in speaking. It is much more difficult than you can imagine. I can, as a salesperson, I can say, Lackness Laboratories is a fine chemical community. We're a high-quality, large-scale, fine chemical manufacturer of organic chemicals. It took me weeks, if not months, to be able to do what 50 people do 24 hours a day, 5 days a week, and to boil it down into a few words that just like pop out of my mouth. That is the kind of skill, ideally, they will have at the end of it. I worked in a laboratory studying XYZ enzyme that is relevant to ZYX disease. I did these skills. And these are the things that are helpful for you to learn. And then finally, this is the hard part, is finding the best match. What kind of work do you want to do? Where's the job? Think about what you want and then find out. Talk to people. Go to the market. For every job that you look for online, I would suggest that you try to talk to one person. It is easy to go to Indeed.com and stick into the search term, the search bar, chemist. It is much harder and much more valuable to talk to people and to ask them to help you look for work. They're willing to do it, if they can do that. Okay, so if you want to get a job in industry, what are you going to need? Obviously, you will need to have done the work. Obviously, you will need to be prepared to talk about what you did. You're going to boil it down into a resume. Pretty simple, just one page. No fancy graphics, nothing. Don't worry about all that. Just talk about what you did in a simple way. I like a LinkedIn page. LinkedIn is a garbage social network, but it is a great 24-hour resume. It is also a Rolodex, a way of contacting people that does not forget. It is easy to unfriend people on Facebook. It is very difficult to unconnect from people on LinkedIn. It is a great way. It has a really annoying little buzz when, it is kind of mean in the way that it will on phones, it will buzz through everything. So it's annoying. Use it. You don't have to pay for it. Do not pay for the premium. Just do it. Work on it once for 2 hours, and then work on it as you're looking for work, every 10 minutes every week. Just add something, throw a little extra document in there, change, update something. Don't participate in the polls. Don't, the timeline aspect of LinkedIn is like a trash fire. Do not get involved. You're going to probably write up a cover letter. It's really painful. It's not particularly useful, but just be prepared that some people like a cover letter. Be prepared for the fact that job applications, while job applications are relatively easy right now, right? We're post-Great Resignation, everybody's looking for work. It could be a short time to find a job. It could be a very long time. But just be aware that it could be long. And you'll likely have a short screening phone call. You're probably going to have an on-site interview. It could be as short as an hour. It could be as long as a day. Be prepared for that. And then finally, be prepared for ultimately, happily, salary and benefit negotiations. You have a minimum salary that you're looking for. If they came to you and they offered you, we'd like to hire you as a chemist for $10 a year. You would say, no, I would not accept that. We would like to hire you as a chemist for $65,000 a year. Oh, do you want something else? You always want something else. Hey, what are your stock options? What's your 401k match? You gave me 5 days for vacation. This other company is offering 12. How about 12? So these are the things that you need to do. Resources for job searching. Students, talk to your professors, talk to the people that they know. I am here because I know Arthur Glassfeld. Many of you, too, may know Arthur Glassfeld. He's pretty great. He's the reason I'm here. He may be the reason you're here. It works. Talk to the people in your group, talk to your department's alumni, talk to ACS career consultants, especially if you're a member of the ACS. They're free, they're great. Websites for looking for jobs. I'm going to tell you the reality, which is that looking for work by the internet, just like internet dating, sucks. It is terrible. It is a black hole of putting your application in and never hearing anything again. Be prepared for that. This is why I really suggest to you that you not only do that, you have to, but you do want to learn to talk to people as well. So, chemistry jobs, CNM is a great place. Half of them will be professorships that you're not qualified for, but you'll also get entry-level positions as well. LinkedIn, Indeed, ZipRecruiter, these are all the typical stuff, and it's nothing that you don't know already. Okay, one more thing. You may have this sense, especially you seniors, that like, I have graduated, now I must go find a job in chemistry. But this is one thing that is really cool, that in 2010, the Census Bureau came out with a study, and this is my favorite graphic in the world, which is that it shows here, these are all the people in 2010 that had a STEM degree of some kind. These are all their jobs. And what you see here is not surprising. If you had a college major of computers, mathematics, and statistics, guess what? Half of them became computer workers. That's not surprising. If you had an engineering degree, a quarter of them became computer workers. Another half of them became engineers. Shocking, or not. Physical sciences. So this is chemistry, physics, geology. Look at the relatively small number that became physical scientists. So, I believe that you don't have to work in chemistry if you have a chemistry degree. In fact, most people who got a degree in chemistry do not work as a chemist in the laboratory. So, that was 2020's graphic. The new graphic isn't nearly as good. This is the data from 2020, and you can see here that managers, non-STEM, whatever that means, is the top category. Physical sciences is just 10%. Many people go into healthcare. It would not be shocking if you walked up to your doctor, like crashed on the way home and woke up in the ER and looked at the doctor and said, "What is your degree?" He said, "Chemistry." That wouldn't be surprising. Or nurse, or physical therapist. Sales, that's me. Education, again, not surprising. You can see here that for the MS PhD holders, again, basically, they end up somewhere in there. Interestingly, you see the computer workers. Okay, so I'm more or less done talking to the students. So I am now going to talk to the group as a whole with some numbers that I think are very interesting. And we hopefully will have some interesting discussion about it. Some facts for the chemistry community to ponder. The American government, through the National Science Foundation, interviews by questionnaire every single research PhD holder in the United States. They ask you a bunch of questions. If you graduated with a PhD in chemistry in the United States, you were given this survey. It's called the Survey of Undergraduates. 90% of PhD graduates will fill that out. And so we now know, and this has basically been true for the last 10 years, that the median time to doctorate is 5.8 years. So, that's a non-trivial amount of time. half take long, half take short. What do they do after they get that PhD? The most common outcome of a PhD in chemistry is the next step is a postdoc. The red line up there. This is a graphic from Slate based on NSF data. 30-odd% go and do a postdoc of some kind. This chart is from 1992 to 2012. This trend has been going on for quite some time. This is my chart with the same data. You can see here that postdoc is the top category for 2019. So, the most common outcome of a PhD in chemistry is a postdoc. You can see here, the latest data that we have is for academic year 2020. That's the top one, 36%. So, audience, I have some thoughts for you. If you graduate from college with a degree in computer science and get a job at Google, your starting salary is $189,000. 124 of that in salary, 43,000 of that in stock compensation. For people for whom money is the primary driving factor for career selection, how does country rank? Question number 2. This is an ad for this year from University of North Carolina, Wilmington. That's a great school. Good school in Wilmington, North Carolina. It's not Harvard. It's not some other school. It is required for you to have a postdoc in order to apply for this position. This is not a bad school. This is not the finest school. But they are demanding minimum educational experience requirement. Have postdoctoral experience at the time of appointment. So, 5.8 years, you gotta have, I don't know what that means, at least one more year. So now you're at 6.8 years. Are postdoctoral appointments necessary? Do we really need to do this? Why do small colleges do this? Now, I've talked to many small college professors, and this is just me yammering, who say like, oh yeah, no, it's really important, you, Jim, if you graduate, if your daughter, your 14-year-old daughter, if she went to my small college, you want me to have lots of experience before I let your daughter into my laboratory. And I would say, yeah, you're probably right. But I gotta ask the question, like, do we really need that? Isn't 5.8 years enough? So, there's the imponderable number 2. Imponderable number 3, this is a graph from a recent paper in Nature that shows where faculty come from. You see that chart there, that big blue thing up there? That is one university that produces many faculty for all the other universities. What do you think that university is? Any guesses? Harvard. It is Harvard. Isn't there a better way to pick faculty? Like, are we sure this is the way we want to do this? Like, sure, why not? Like, I'm American. I can say that. Can I say this in Oregon? I believe in meritocracy. But like, really? Do we really want that? All right. Last one. This is the hardest one for me to think about, and then I'll make an additional. Okay. So this is the American Chemical Society Salary Survey. It's the latest data. You can see here, this is the salaries every year based in constant 2020 dollars. And you can see here that we, as a membership, have been losing against inflation. And that trend is almost 20 years old. So, for those in the audience, do you recommend chemistry as like if I looked my daughter in the eye and she said, Dad, do you think I should become a chemist? I'd have to think about it. Like I've actually thought about it quite a that's something to think about. All right, so that is something that is really a lot of yammering. We're almost done. Okay, a final note to the students. You may be kind of like, what is this guy saying? I'm going to end with a reminder that I think is really powerful and something that, like, hey, if you're asking me, do I think you should go to college? I think the answer is yes, you should go to college. Every year, the Bureau of Labor Statistics puts out this chart. It's called Education Pays. On the left, we have, these are the median weekly earnings, and then the doctoral degrees. I think there's a correlation. On the right is the unemployment rate. I also think there's a correlation. More education tends to mean higher salaries and lower unemployment. This does not mean that is the case for you. You could be somewhere in the middle and have very high salary and very low unemployment. But as a group, that is the broad message. So I'm definitely not saying like, you should not go to college. No, if you look at the numbers, you should go to college. If you look at the numbers, maybe you should think about a doctoral degree. It's not particularly surprising, right, that people with doctoral degrees show a very low unemployment. I will say that it is worth pointing out that maybe there is, for PhDs, maybe even PhD chemists, there is high underemployment, but that is something that we don't really know. We can all speculate. I guess that most of the experienced PhD chemists in this room would say, oh yes, I know underemployed chemists. But whether or not that is a number that can be easily measured is not necessarily the case. Okay, students, things to remember. Finding a job in chemistry is hard. It can be done. I did it, you can do it. Do not do this alone. Talk to people, find mentors, find people that you like to talk with about difficult things. That is the most important thing that you can do. I'll do a little speculation and say the general trends for hiring in industry. Like, if you were a graduate student, like looking for work right now, I'd be like, you're probably looking better. I probably would say fall 2023 would probably be worse than 2022. How worse? I do not know. I would say that fall 2021 was probably better than this year. Don't know how much. And then finally, again, a reminder that not everybody who studies chemistry works as a chemist. So with that, I'll be happy to answer your questions. I'm going to ask the students in the room if they have questions, and those questions will receive priority. So, are there any questions from the students? Yes?
So, I'm not sure if this is something you consider useful, but are there any good statistics on job satisfaction in chemical careers?
No, I am not aware of any data around that. That is a really great question. No, I do not know that's such a. Any other questions from the students?
I want to repeat questions with you.
Understood. The question was, is there any good job satisfaction data for chemists? And that is no, I'm not aware of any. There's probably more job satisfaction data about all occupations, and you probably find like scientists on there, and then you could maybe make a correlation there. Yes?
And this is the first bit of your talk. What was your first chemistry job?
My first chemistry job that I got paid for, I worked at Ben Research as an analytical chemist. The first 2 weeks of my job, I spent turning a crank. It was more fun than you might think, but modern times, old times, they only had a radio. Modern times, I could, put in my headphones and have a podcast or two. Yes, question in the back there. I think Ethan?
It is me. Okay. Thank you for some behind me. A small question. On your education pays chart, are technical certificates and things of that matter falling under professional degrees, or are they not counted?
I would presume, though I do not know, that they. So the question was, what is the, where do technical certificates count? And I would presume it would fall somewhere under some college, but I do not know. So, hard to say.
Yes, that's where it goes.
Yeah. It's probably, yes.
So earlier in your talk, you mildly hypocritically suggested that taking a gap year between undergrad and grad was a bad decision.
Okay, so this is part of my, so the question is a gap year good or bad? I'm sorry, please continue. Is that the question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your view?
No, you're completely right. Like okay. So I view this as a straightforward economic calculation. I believe that your 20s students are extraordinarily valuable. There's no other time like your 20s. There's no other time when you are so flexible and you are free and you have 10 years to be in your 20s. Once you reach 30, like, you know, stuff starts falling off or falling out or, you know, whatever. You get responsibilities and it's harder. At 20, I was unmarried and like didn't have a care in the world. And at 30, I was a grad student, I had a wife, and I knew that my job as a graduate student for me to progress meant that the next reaction in the laboratory needed to work. And the longer I was there, the longer I was delaying the rest of my life. And that's my criticism of postdocs in terms of academics. If you're a young academic and you're going to make the rest of your life somewhere in the 50,000, why are you making these people stop to get more training at $40,000 a year just so that they can delay the time that they're going to make $70,000 a year? Like, hurry up! So that's my economic calculation of the gap year. But like, look, I should now one finger out, three fingers back. Like the skills I learned during my job at Penn Research, you know, where it was like this is the problem. This is the difference between industry training and schooling. In school, you will run one NMR, or maybe if you're lucky, you're going to run 100. In work, you're going to run 50 a day. You think you're going to get better? You're going to get better. So that's valuable, right? But like, it wasn't like my first true employer, like, said like, fella, you got an extra year of industry experience, I'm going to pay you $5,000 more, right? It didn't count. So, I mean, but I'm not really sure, right? There's so much that I could like say about that year that says like, oh, well, that was a great year, but you know, so it's just, I think that I heard a high school counselor say that a gap year with a plan is a great thing, and I think that's true. All right. More student questions? Yes.
I haven't heard the term postdoc before. What does that entail?
Okay, so when you graduate, you graduate with a PhD in chemistry. Many schools will offer what's called a postdoctoral fellowship. The best kind of postdoctoral fellowships, and they are very good indeed, will put you in a different geographic location. It will give you a different set of skills, and it will give you a new network. You just spent 6 years meeting everybody at, State University of Austin. And now you are doing your postdoc at private university of super awesome. And you now know everybody in the building there too. Plus some new skills. All these things are valuable. But sadly, postdocs are paid a little bit more than graduate students, but not nearly as much. So nobody really knows what the median salary for a postdoc is, but broadly speaking, what's called NIH minimum is like a number that everybody uses right now. NIH minimum is $49,000 a year, right? And as a grad student, you might have made 35 or whatever the number is. I know for many of the older folks in this room, the fact that graduate students, like I think my final year, I made 22,000, and you probably were all in the like low 9,000s or something like that. So anyway, does that answer your question? Okay, so it's the idea that it's like a little bit more training. That's like, you get to show that you really learn how to be a scientist, and then you apply it to a different place. So when you ultimately apply for an industry position or an academic position, you can say, like, look, I have 2 data points. You know, I was here and I was awesome, and I was here and I was also awesome, right? And it's like, you know, hire that person. So. Yes?
Any thoughts on entrepreneurship in chemistry?
I mean, just like any entrepreneurship, you know, if you have the stomach for risk, you can make money. You can make a lot of money, and you can have a lot of freedom. But the flip side of that is that you can make 0 money. Yes?
Jim, what are your thoughts on the benefits of doing a master's degree prior to doing a doctoral degree?
So the question was, what are the thoughts on doing a master's degree prior to a doctoral degree? I would say that a master, ultimately it depends on what you want to do. If you just want to work in industry, I think that the ROI is very valuable. That you get, you know, you definitely get a salary bump from doing it. And then you have something that you can take if you want to do a PhD. If you go to a different institution, that 2 years doesn't really add on, so you're like, it is the relative value of those 2 years that you have to think about. So, I mean, it's not a bad thing. Many people do it. As you can tell, like the priority for me is the time, and so it's better to like make a decision quickly and stick to that plan. But like that's me saying that, but that's not the reality of being a human. So yeah, it can work for you. I will say this to the broader community. We often have the statement that, like, you know, we as PhD chemists, well, you know, master's chemists are really more hireable. We have no data to back that up. As a matter of fact, if you look at the old numbers that the ACS will put out, not that the ACS data was particularly good, but the unemployment numbers were the reverse. It's the bachelor, you know, the higher the more education you got, the lower your unemployment numbers were. Whether or not you really can believe of that is not high. But if you like were to say, like, you know, you walked into your break room and said, master's chemists are more employable, everybody would say, oh yes, that is very true. And you'd say, what is the peer-reviewed data that says that? And you'd be like, everybody would tell you, no, we don't do that here. So, yes?
Are you satisfied with your
Question was, am I satisfied? I like what I do. I mean, like, so this gets deeply into like the personal contentment stuff, right? And for me, you know, it depends on like your background. And my background is that I grew up with, obviously, a Chinese family, and what isn't obvious is with a religious background. And so that kind of tempers any thoughts I have about money, the religious part. So yes, I try to be satisfied. I'm not dissatisfied. In the back, yes.
What would be your biggest advice when it comes to research? Like, do you think it's preferred to do research within your college, outside your college, or no preference?
I would say the question was, what is the best way to do research? And I would say the best way is to find the way sounds very much like a cop-out, right? But my answer would be, find the place that you can do great or good research sustainably. The goal for you as a student, sorry, I'm making assumptions here. The goal for you as a student is not to publish 17 papers. The goal for you is to do a project, to learn what research is about, to try to make some progress, and to figure out whether or not you like it. And if you can put that into that box, then the question becomes, in my opinion, the question becomes, where can I do that the easiest? And if it's at your institution, right, because you will be there every day, then that's great. If it's because I want to figure out, like, how to run, I really am about high field, super high field NMR spectrometers. Sorry, you're going to have to go to Tallahassee, Florida. But there's no other place in the world like whatever that place is, the super high, awesome NMR. Yeah. But anyway, so does that answer? Yeah. Student questions. Okay, all right. No more student questions. If you guys want one more.
Is there anything you would change in like your journey?
That's not a fair question. The question was, is there anything I would have changed? Yeah, I would have hurried up and got the heck out of grad school. I mean, I was like, some of that was my project and some of that was me. There was a lot of it that was me. And like, is there like a year in there that didn't need to be there? Yeah, absolutely. So, but like, everybody who goes to grad school knows, either you know this person or you are this person, right? There are the people who like do awful and like find out it's not for them. That's fine. That's the whole point. There are the people who like do awesome and are just like awesome. They walk into the floor. They're the awesome the whole time, and then bang, they get out in 4.9 years and they're awesome. I was somewhere in the middle, and would I like to be awesomer? Ooh. But like, I don't know if that would have bought me much more, right? But that's a simple answer. Troy, you've been very patient.
Going back to this is a comment, not a question. Going back to your bit about know yourself, what you want. I want to add one dimension to it. Understand your types of things or conditions of work that are important to you. And admittedly, for most people, young, and maybe not so young, it's not an easy thing to figure out. I sort of have an advantage in this. I have ADHD. I know that if I don't have a lot of intellectual stimulation and ability to do a lot of little projects all the time, I'm going to be in trouble in work. This is why I personally focus on doing many things, a lot of intellectual stimulation, and lots of little, if you will, micro projects within the larger one. I am no good at something like analytical chemistry. It can be very routine, right? If you figure out those sorts of factors that drive you, it will help you find the type of work that you're going to be happiest with.
Bernie.
What kind of people is Lacamas Labs hiring now?
Lacamas Laboratories routinely hires chemical operators. That does not require a chemistry degree at all. It mostly requires mechanical aptitude. And then it typically hires research chemists, anywhere from bachelor's to PhD, primarily with an organic perspective. I don't believe we're hiring anytime soon, but I do not speak for my employer. Also, that's a good point and something for the students to think about. Obviously, you want to look for work at places where they are looking for work. first. At the same time, if you really want to work somewhere, apply. You don't know. There was no posted job openings for me at Lackness. I basically sent an email and said, like, I'm going to be in town, you want to talk? The other thing to think about, and so I'm going to narrow my statement, but broaden it. There's some study that came out, and you never know with these studies, but like, I think it says something true. Between men and women who are applying for positions, women tend to apply when they meet 95% of the qualifications. Men tend to apply when they meet 60% of the qualifications. I do not want to take a side in the gender wars, but in this perspective, applying for positions in which you do not meet all the qualifications, especially in a particularly hot job market, is a good thing. At the very least, you may receive feedback from your application that says, no, you're not qualified. But here are the things that we like, here are the things that you're missing. Exactly, it's a signal. Go and get the things that are missing. So, that's information. Okay, David, sorry.
First of all, again, thank you so much. Great presentation.
Thank you.
It's really insightful. Now, I got my PhD and my postdoc in England. So my question is, and also you have experience with entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about going abroad for study and so on, and starting your own business that you have done about that?
Okay. So David asked two good questions, and two questions where I have an opinion on, and I may not have the correct opinion. Question number one, is it a good idea to go abroad for study? My position is that it depends, but it is, I would emphasize the risk, because I'm not primarily a risk taker. I believe that the problem is, okay, you all may not know that, so everybody knows, this is my favorite, one of my favorite little ramblings. Everybody knows what is a great university in America. Harvard University is a great university. Reed College is a great college. Does anybody know what the relative importance or prominence of National Taiwan University is? Nobody knows. It is the best, most prestigious university in Taiwan. My father did not go to National Taiwan University, and much to his chagrin, he went to a different school. That's my concern about people going to other schools, is that you do not know where the job market in the United States may be benighted to not recognize your school as being a good school. That being said, that's what a cover letter is for, where you can explain that I went to foreign university of Awesome, and they taught me skills X, Y, and Z, just like the skills you need. So that is the risk. For those who are interested in studying abroad, I believe that it is important. If you intend, like, goodness, if you want to stay abroad, then, don't think about what I'm about to say next. But if you're thinking about returning home, then you need to think a couple of steps ahead and maintain connections, maintain discussions with potential employers. Then I think that, you're covering your bases. With regards to entrepreneurship, again, it's really one of these things where if you have a stomach for risk, if you have self-discipline, if you have the willingness to do things that are difficult that require self-motivation, then yeah, entrepreneurship can be great. I am not particularly entrepreneurially oriented. That being said, I have worked for two men who were. So, maybe there's a lesson to be learned there. Any other questions? Yes?
Besides
applying to colleges and scholarships, what do you think that us high school seniors can do now and starting post-secondary education to be as successful as possible?
I would say that I'm overly mathematical in my thinking about this, right? But the slide that I put up here, so the question was basically, how do you be successful as a high school student, other than just kind of the applying part? I believe that as you get older and as you get your power to ask people questions, to stop people, gets weaker. Mine is weaker than yours. So among the many things that you can do to like make yourself a more successful chemist or make yourself a more successful person or student, the thing that you can do is you can talk to people to figure out what they like and they don't like about their jobs, or how they are successful at their jobs, right? And the jobs that you like and the jobs that you don't like. I mean, both are valuable. Like, you sit at the table every day and you hear somebody say, I hate my job. Well, maybe that job isn't for you. But talk to people and get to know them. And, it's really easy, again, people say like networking, and that is true. But I believe that networking needs to be done with people that you actually can sustain a network with. And that means more than just emailing them once a year or once every 5 years, but actually having a conversation with them. So the distance between acquaintances and mentors and sponsors. And so learning that aspect of things is useful. Especially when you go to college and like everything changed, except like you are changing, but also your environment is changing, and then it will be nice for you to have outside people more than your family that can be anchor points. Anybody want to throw out their opinion on the improbable questions? I asked them that fair questions.
I'd like to make a comment.
Go for it, and then you can add
I'd like to make a comment to the students that, in perceiving the difference between academic and industrial jobs, Jim, I think you pretty much made it a difference between salaries. And that's not the entire consideration between academic and industry. And my master's supervisor had some real words of wisdom about this, which I remember from many decades ago. And he had come to Portland State as a professor after having worked in industry. And one of my co-graduate students at the university once asked him, well, why did you leave industry to come to academics when the industry pays so much more? And his comment was, and this is what you need to think about, I think, in academics, I can be my own boss. In industry, somebody else is going to tell you what you have to do, at least when you first start. And I think that as important as salary, that's something to consider. Do you want to be a boss, or do you want to be boss? And I think that's an important thing to think about. It's not just about salary.
I think that's very fair. So Harry points out that in industry you have a boss or bosses, and in academia you have fewer bosses. I will note that I happen to have a great job in the sense that I have one boss, and he looks me in the eye and he tells me no, and I can nod and say like, that's right, Alan. But if you work at a very large company, which, let's be honest, most chemists, I suspect, work at very, very large companies. What you do from day to day may not matter. Like, what matters most to that company? Their stock price or the reaction that you just ran, right? And the person telling telling you no may not be in the room and may not look you in the eye and probably will never look you in the eye. And that is an aspect of working in corporate America that is really real. So that's a fair point. I think we've taxed the patience of everyone we have. I'm happy to stop and answer as many student questions as we like, and thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us this evening, everyone. Take care. And let's, make sure to come talk to Jim, students on your way out. Yeah, and our next meeting will be November 17th. We have Professor Ginger Schultz joining us, a chemical education professor. It should be very interesting. The science of teaching chemistry and pedagogy is what the subject of that. Thank you, everybody.
Madam Treasurer, it was just like there was no
Take a video when you go like this.
Well, you guys pulled off a good couple of questions there. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really eye-opening, I guess you could say.
Yeah. He's a good guy. The only question I was going to ask, but I thought this is lasting way too long, is about informational interviews. What that means is you're not trying to interview for any position at all. You're just calling or emailing and saying, I would like more information with somebody who
Good to see you, Harry.
and they're out. Yeah, and you need the topic. Because then they give you information, but you're not applying for it. Checking information. That's
I missed what you said.
Oh, I just talked about informational interviews, like asking questions without expecting to get a job or anything.
Oh, cool. My wife stepped into the environment and that's what I'm not. So, yeah, I would rather kind of go. So, I would put something it's like engineering. I would say heroes and wanting what? Think about I'm 46. That means that I graduated high So, but like that's, and then, you know, that may help you make it. But ultimately, it's very medical school, it seems to be very much so I make sure that the teaching works, and partially is about standard habits, and then partially about then a couple of years. Thank you.
I would argue that a good university is very individually chemical engineering over the last 20 years. Each of those chemical engineer might be slightly more desirable like the organic synthesis or a specialty might not be as employable as spending that extra time.
Yeah. And, you know, the correct answer is yeah. Yeah. And it's slowly changing up. The number of these
But I'd be interested, yeah. Some of the skill sets that maybe they learn too might translate to, and kind of the argument of why would we do postdoc to get that extra year, and why are these places, you know, smaller schools requiring postdoc? I think the chemical engineers are one of the people who might just say, hey, I've had enough school, I'm going to go learn at my job, start the engine, and then they just go. So that might be the chemical engineers. Well, I'm a chemical engineer, so that's why I know.
It is not something with
I really appreciate it. Very well together. And let's look at everything that's happening. Yeah, I am really weird, but like what you're saying, you just told them about people who are recently gone to the career, like totally serious. When I was in school, yeah, it was like the early 2000s. How I can be to somebody who's just starting their school program, not as useful as somebody who finished 2 years ago and is now employed doing what they want to do. So you got to find